second session in our monthly Lunch and Learn series. Just a review, once a month, Revolution Group will be discussing topics of interest for best practices for your small to medium businesses. Again, if there's a topic of interest in discussing in future months, please feel free to tweet at rev_group using the hashtag Lunch and Learn, and we will take that topic into consideration for future webinars. As many of you may be aware, Revolution Group is a premier IT consultant serving small to medium businesses in the greater Columbus area for over 20 years. Today's discussion is centered on Windows Server 2003 migration. I am again joined today by our Manager of Engineering and Project Services, Scott Kaufman. If there are any questions throughout his presentation, please feel free to type them in the browser and we will address them at the conclusion of the presentation. So without further ado, here is Scott Kaufman.
Thank you, Scott. Yes, one thing that we've been noticing a lot with our clients is there's a lot of legacy platforms out there, including Windows Server 2003 and even Windows Server 2000 in some cases. This discussion is meant to center around Windows Server 2003 and Microsoft basically pulling the plug on support for this platform. So there's approximately 140 days left until the July 14th, 2015 deadline when that end of support comes. This is fast approaching. It's not some far off distant date. That is this summer, and that is coming up just a few months from now. So we're going to discuss kind of what this means, what your options are, and what a migration process, an example migration would look like as far as the planning phases. So that being said, end of support, what that really means is that there's going to be no more security updates, critical updates. The slide up there mentions 37 updates released in 2013. That number was even larger in 2014. There are going to be no more updates released after July 14th, 2015. That means if a new security vulnerability is found in Server 2003, or maybe hackers are waiting for that date to pass so they can use that vulnerability they've been holding on to. Once that becomes known and starts being used, Microsoft will not patch that. You will be operating without a life vest at that time. What that also means, you won't be PCI compliant if you're running credit card transactions through a Windows Server 2003 environment. That is just a very definite rule from the PCI compliance folks that 2003 servers will not be able to pass that audit, when the next time that comes around. So that is a very important aspect of this. It doesn't matter if you're running that Server 2003 on a physical machine, a virtual machine. It doesn't matter. It's the platform. Windows Server 2003, whether it's 2003 R2 or just plain 2003, they're all affected. There's going to be security holes out there to be taken advantage of, not to mention the ability of getting your applications and platform up to a more recent and feature-rich platform. As I mentioned, you have to start planning this because the migration timetables can expand into many months. Kind of looking at where to go from here from 2003, where you look at the new platforms out there, you can start taking advantage of cloud computing, maybe moving some of your software to the cloud on a software as a service platform. Maybe you want to move your Exchange or SharePoint to Office 365 and let Microsoft host it. There are a lot of different options. You can also look at moving your servers to the cloud and having them hosted in a cloud provider or maybe a co-location somewhere. These are all options that are on the table as you look at where you take this information to. That being said, we're going to go into what the steps of the migration look like. It's really separated into 4 different phases. The first phase is essentially a discovery. You need to get on your system. You need to start documenting, what applications are installed, what file shares are in use, what printer shares are in use, what scheduled jobs are running, what services are running, what is the application, the line of business application you're running on there. Do you have vendor support for it? Maybe you don't, and that version you're running isn't compatible with the latest version of Windows, and you don't have that option. So now you need to look at moving your software to another application, your data to another application. Maybe your line of business application runs on SQL Server 2005. Well, SQL Server 2005, isn't compatible with Windows Server 2012. Now you need to look at upgrading your SQL licensing to a more current form. So there's a lot of, the discovery phase is very important. That's the beginning step to determine how you can move from there and what that migration plan is going to look like. The second step would be to assess that discovery inventory. Determine what the Microsoft server roles are, the applications, Exchange, SQL, SharePoint, custom applications, and then third-party applications. Custom applications, maybe you've had someone write some in-house software for you. Those are not immune to this too. They need to be determined to figure out how they can be moved or migrated or ported to an updated operating system platform. 2003 operated on, in most cases, the 32-bit computing platform. 2012 is only a 64-bit platform. A lot of applications require reworking to make that jump. If the ones you have on your server haven't, they will need to be reworked, or you'll need to basically find another way to work with that data. In the discovery process, the next step, once you've determined the type of the software, is determine the criticality. What's still in use? Is this important? Does my business run on this? That allows you to basically set priorities on what you need to migrate and maybe what can just be retired. The next option, the complexity and risk, determine, what those, the complexity of moving that. Maybe it takes a high effort. The whole, what's the impact and what's the effort. Determining what's the low-hanging fruit and what's going to take a lot of planning to accomplish and migrate. Once you've discovered what you do need to migrate and what needs you need next to determine where that's going to go, whether that be replacing it with in-house servers, either physical or maybe on a virtualization platform. Maybe it's moving to a cloud provider, and then maybe it's taking some of those services off of a server platform and moving it to a cloud hosting platform like Office 365, or maybe you move your CRM package to Salesforce. There's a lot of different options there. If you have more questions on what Office 365 can do, we did a previous lunch and learn on that, which I believe you can go to our website, www.revolutiongroup.com, and pull up the recording of that if you'd like to learn more information on what those capabilities are. From Windows Server 2012 R2, as I mentioned, there's been a lot of changes. Some of the features that are brought out in the latest revision of 2012, you get a much better ability to scale your applications and your hardware. 2003, Server 2003 operating with a 32-bit platform had a very low RAM limit. Server 2012 greatly expands that. Server 2012 adds a lot of file server solutions, being able to scale out your storage, provide a better high availability solution. The backup products within 2012 have a lot more granularity in dealing with individual applications. 2012 also works well with cloud providers, so you can have hybrid applications. If you like the idea of having your email and Office 365, but maybe you have certain accounts that need local connectivity with a line of business application, well, you can run that in a hybrid environment, having some mailboxes on premise, having some mailboxes in the cloud. Server 2012 really is a cloud platform. It's meant to work with the cloud. It's really where the future is going. And also, for more of the administration side, there's greatly improved support tools on 2012. When Revolution Group needs to work on an issue on a server, we have a lot more tools at our disposal in 2012 than 2003. As just an example of this, Windows PowerShell, which is kind of a command line based utility, has over 3,000 commands in 2012. There was less than 300 in 2003. So there's a lot more functionality, a lot more options for automation and scripting that you don't get on the 2003 platform. Looking at cloud hosting options, as I mentioned, there's kind of different ways to split that up, where they're looking at just moving full VM to full VM in the cloud, or maybe you want to move certain services and just replicate your backups to the cloud, or your services like Office 365. There are options for all these different things, and Revolution Group can help determine what's a candidate for a cloud and what isn't, and kind of give you the pros and cons and where that fits into your business, and determine what's likely to be successful for you, and really kind of tailor the destinations based upon your business needs. If you are sticking with your on-premise, the hardware required is much more than what 2003 is. Odds are, if you're running 2003 on a physical server, I bet that hardware is probably out of warranty, and it's probably aged and it needs improved upon. Maybe you're running out of storage. As you start looking at having to do that, you have to factor in those lead times for replacing that server. There's the dock workers strike out in California has introduced a lot of delays in hardware. Things like that can cause delays in receiving that new hardware that could push your migration plans back and possibly prevent you from migrating before that deadline of July 14th. Of course, you could also add those 2003, moving those to maybe a virtualization platform you already have, or maybe you're looking at a new virtualization platform. In 2012, R2 can also be used in a cloud VM model. You can still run that software. It's still the operating system of choice if you're going to be going to a cloud-hosted VM environment. So we've kind of touched on kind of what the end of support means for you, kind of what the destinations could look like, and what a migration scenario, kind of what are the phases through there. If you're interested in learning more, this really is something that it needs to be tailored to each individual, business, because the applications you run could be vastly different from someone else. And if you want to talk further about that, just give us a call, or you can contact me directly. Be happy to talk about how we can start going down the path of doing some discovery and assessing your environment, what options you have. At this time, I'll turn it back over to Scott Ratterman and see if we have any questions.
Okay. Again, if there's any questions, feel free to type them in the browser. It looks like we do have a few. And again, feel free to throw any additional ones out there. The first question that came up, Scott, was typically, how long does a migration take?
Again, that's a pretty, I'll answer that with depends. It really depends on what roles and services you're having to migrate, what kind of vendor support you have, are there hardware lead times. But in general, if you're looking to migrate, kind of a rough estimate, you're probably looking anywhere from 2 to 4 months if you're aggressive with your planning and the discovery and the assessment, and then the migration planning, is really kind of a good kind of a window there.
All right. Next question we had was, does this apply to Small Business Server 2003 as well?
It absolutely does. It's on the same platform and it is at the same end-of-life date.
Okay. Looks like we had one more come in. Are we able to purchase support directly from Microsoft at the end of the support date?
Yes, I've heard you can. I don't know anything about the costs. At least Microsoft hasn't published it. You can purchase support that basically allows you to call Microsoft if you've got a problem that you need their involvement from on the operating system side. As far as being able to have automatic critical updates come, that's still not going to apply. I have heard kind of a rumor that it's $600 per server per year to get that support, but that's not a quote from Microsoft. That's just kind of what I've heard. So.
Okay. All right. Looks like that's all we have question-wise. Again, if there's any questions, feel free to contact Scott at the information that is provided on the screen there. And again, if there's a topic that is of interest in discussing in the months to come, please feel free to tweet at rev_group using the hashtag Lunch and Learn. And this concludes our monthly Lunch and Learn for this month. And we'll be sending out information about the future Lunch and Learns at a later date. Thank you, everyone.